I got hit by a car and ended up with a pretty serious head injury. The doctor told me I might suffer from some temporary memory loss. Just to mess with her, I looked at the girl sitting by my bed and joked, "Wait, who exactly are you?" She froze for a second before giving me a cold and flat response. "We're just friends," she said. I stared directly at Olivia. She sat there by my hospital bed, her face a complete mask as she reduced our entire history to those 3 words. She was so distant that it was clear this was no joke. I wanted to snap back and ask if she was serious, but the words died in my throat. I just sat there in silence, staring at her, completely speechless. I knew deep down that the only reason she was here was because the hospital had her listed as my emergency contact. I did not call her out on it. Instead, I hesitated for a split second before forcing a casual smile. "Oh, is that right? Well, thanks for being so thoughtful," I said. She just gave me a curt nod, as if my existence was an inconvenience. She checked her phone and glanced at the time. "Now that you are awake, I am heading out because I have a mountain of work to finish," she said. Before I could even process that, she was already on her feet. As she reached for the door handle, perhaps a final shred of guilt got the better of her. She turned back for a second and told me to get some rest. The second the door clicked shut, my fake smile vanished and my expression went cold. Nobody at work knew that Olivia and I were actually dating. We had been together since college. After we graduated, we moved to Chicago together to join the most prestigious marketing firm in the city. We were young and ambitious back then. We both knew that corporate culture was not exactly friendly toward office romances. We made a silent pact to keep our private lives completely separate from our professional identities. 4 years later, we had both climbed the ladder to become senior account managers. We each led our own teams and were often in direct competition for the same accounts. This gave us even more reason to keep our relationship a total secret. We kept everyone in the dark for a long time. There were moments when I considered coming clean and suggested we just go public. After all, the employee handbook did not strictly forbid dating between colleagues. She always found a way to brush the topic aside with some vague excuse. It got to the point where I was not even sure if we were still a couple or just roommates. Today, however, everything finally became crystal clear. The doctor had informed Olivia that my memory loss might be temporary and that I would likely recover quickly. Even with that knowledge, she did not blink when she told him we were just casual friends. She clearly was not worried about me confronting her once my memory returned. She did not care if I was actually confused or just testing her loyalty. It was obvious that she had been looking for a way out for a long time. If she did not end things with me, she would not be able to openly chase after Jerry. A man's intuition can be sharper than a radar sometimes. Honestly, things between Olivia and me had been cold for months. We only stayed together because of the sheer momentum of our 7-year history. We started dating in college, and by now we knew each other's habits better than our own. We were part of each other's lives until we became a habit. I could sense even the slightest shift in her mood or behavior. The real trouble started when a new intern named Jerry joined her department. He was tall, charming, and had a way of drawing people in immediately. His last name was Harrison. A friend in HR once whispered to me that his employee file listed Pablo Harrison as his father. Pablo was the billionaire founder and CEO of our firm, making Jerry royalty. Jerry was the definition of a trust fund baby working at his father's empire. When Olivia started giving him special treatment, she had a very convenient and professional explanation ready for me. She told me that it was better to stay on his good side since he was the boss's son. She claimed he was just a spoiled kid and definitely not her type at all. She told me I was overthinking things and being paranoid. I kept my mouth shut and played along for a while. Eventually, I could not tell if she thought I was stupid or if she just did not care enough to hide it anymore. Jerry had barely been there for 2 weeks when I noticed something off. I logged into our Share Music account to find some songs for a presentation. I noticed that she and Jerry were suddenly following each other's profiles. It struck me as very odd because she usually never used the app anymore. Work had kept her so busy that she rarely had time for music these days. We had shared that account since our sophomore year of college. We had logged nearly 9,000 hours of shared listening time over the years. She used to have a public playlist titled Lucas that was filled with songs that reminded her of us. When I checked her profile again, I saw that the playlist was gone. She had deleted our entire history with one click. In its place was a long list of K-pop tracks that she had never shown interest in before. I knew for a fact that Jerry was obsessed with those specific artists. Since we worked in marketing, I tried to rationalize her behavior. I told myself she was probably just researching current trends for a new campaign. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid and overreacting. I logged out without saying a word to her about it. I was never the type to start a fight without solid proof. In a game of high stakes, the winner is usually the one who stays quiet and keeps a cool head. Naturally, the coincidences between Olivia and Jerry did not stop there. In early February, Olivia's team landed a major new account. I was busy leading my own team on a project in Philadelphia at the time. I heard through the grapevine that she was dealing with a particularly demanding client from London. I had been working nonstop all day and had not even had a chance to grab lunch. I called her that evening to check in on her progress and see how she was. She did not pick up, which I assumed meant she was still in meetings. I sent her a quick iMessage, but did not get a reply for hours. Eventually, I saw that she had posted a photo on Facebook. It was a group shot from a team dinner. The photo showed Jerry standing right next to her with a massive grin on his face. Her caption was a quote about knowing the competition. Jerry posted the same photo on Twitter with a caption about winning the war. I checked their profiles and realized they had both updated their bios to match those two phrases. It felt like an inside joke or a secret code that only the two of them shared. It was a level of intimacy that excluded me completely. Meanwhile, my calls and texts were being completely ignored. She was busy commenting on Jerry's post, telling him to make sure he ate and took care of his health. I felt a dull ache in my empty stomach and decided to just turn my phone off for the night. That was the second time I decided to look the other way for the sake of our relationship. 3 days later, the hospital finally cleared me for discharge. Olivia had not sent me a single text the entire morning to see if I was okay. She did have a bouquet of beige roses delivered to my room by a courier. Holding those flowers, I told myself I would give her one last chance to make things right. I sat on a bench in the hallway and dialed her number. It took forever for her to finally answer the phone. I kept my voice as steady as possible when I asked if she could pick me up from the hospital. Neither of us mentioned the amnesia or her claim that we were just friends. We both acted like the hospital drama had never happened. She hesitated for a few seconds before telling me she was completely swamped at work. She offered to call an Uber for me instead of coming herself. I asked her what exactly was keeping her so busy in a very level voice. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. She was probably caught off guard because I was usually the type to just let things go without questioning her. I knew for a fact that our major projects had all just wrapped up. This should have been the slowest week of the quarter for both of us. Yet she was claiming she could not spare 30 minutes to pick me up from the hospital. She did not have anything else to say to defend herself. I sighed and ended the call before things got even more awkward. It is usually pretty obvious when a woman stops caring about you. I remember a night right after graduation when I had a severe case of food poisoning. It was 3 a.m. when I called her in a total panic. When I finally came to the hospital, she was sitting right there next to me. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying, and she was wearing one slipper and one sneaker. Both were for the left foot because she had been in such a rush. I managed a weak laugh, which only made her glare at me through fresh tears. She scolded me for laughing and told me how terrified she was when she found me on the floor. She told me I should have called 911 instead of her. Looking at her then, I felt a profound sense of safety and love. Back then, she was my entire world and my only sanctuary. She really did care about me in those days. We were deeply and sincerely in love once upon a time. Looking back now, that version of us is completely unrecognizable. I shook my head and tossed the beige roses into a nearby trash can without a second thought. A voice behind me asked if I did not like the gift. I turned around to see a man pointing at the flowers with an apologetic look on his face. He explained that his driver was the one who had accidentally hit me the other day. He had been the one to bring me to the hospital and call Olivia before leaving to attend to an emergency. He told me the flowers were a small get-well gift and that he had already settled my hospital bill. He gave me his card and told me to reach out if I needed anything else at all. I realized then, with a bitter irony, that even the flowers had not come from Olivia. I looked at him and apologized for throwing them away and explained that I thought they were for someone else. I thanked him for his help, but I felt like a fool. I knew in my heart that it was officially over between Olivia and me. Olivia was home by the time I finally got back from the hospital. She was sitting on the sofa with her eyes glued to her phone screen. She had a soft smile on her face, as if she was in the middle of a very pleasant conversation. I cannot remember the last time she had smiled like that while looking at me. I lingered in the doorway for a moment until she finally noticed me. She immediately locked her phone and flipped it over on the cushion. She looked startled to see me and asked if I was already discharged. I looked at her with a calm detachment and told her we needed to talk. The actual breakup was surprisingly quiet and devoid of any screaming or drama. When I told her it was over, she did not even ask why. She just sat there in silence for a long time. I could tell she was actually relieved that I was the one to finally say it. She eventually muttered an apology, but I did not bother acknowledging it. When I told her she needed to find a new place to live, she seemed taken aback. She asked me if I was really feeling no pain at all over this. My lack of emotion seemed to bother her for some strange reason. I think she expected me to break down and beg her to stay so she could feel better about herself. I just looked at her with a perfectly blank expression. I did not tell her that I had already done my grieving weeks ago. I grieved every time she ignored my texts while flirting with Jerry on social media. I grieved when she deleted our shared history just to please some rich intern. Loving Olivia had become like carrying a benign tumor in my chest. It was not killing me yet, but I knew it would eventually turn into something toxic. I had to cut it out while I still had the chance to recover fully. As she was packing her last few boxes, I asked her one final question. I asked if she was leaving me because Jerry was the boss's son or because of who he was as a person. She did not hesitate for long before telling me that everyone wants to climb higher in life. Her honesty was almost refreshing, so I gave her a small smile. I told her I genuinely hoped she found the success she was looking for. Her final words to me were a plea not to hate her as she walked out the door for good. I saw Olivia and Jerry standing outside the office building when my cab pulled up. They were surrounded by a group of colleagues from their department. It was lunch hour, so they were likely heading out to a nearby restaurant for a celebration. Jerry was animatedly telling a story and laughing while Olivia watched him with an affectionate expression. She looked genuinely happy now that she did not have to hide her feelings anymore. It was a sharp contrast to how she used to look at me. My driver caught me staring and asked if I had a crush on the girl in the street. I laughed and told him she was actually my ex-girlfriend. His face immediately turned bright red, and he apologized for bringing up a painful subject. Bella greeted me with a huge smile as soon as I walked through the lobby. She asked me how I was feeling and if I was ready to review the New York accounts. She followed me into my office with a mountain of paperwork in her arms as we got back to business. She told me that Albert was officially transferring to the Philadelphia office next month. Everyone was gossiping about who would take over his director position. She said the entire team would be happy whether it was me or Olivia who got the job. Bella hesitated before leaning in to whisper that she had caught Olivia and Jerry in a compromising position in the break room. Everyone already knew that Jerry was Pablo Harrison's son. Bella was clearly worried that Olivia was using him as a way to get the promotion. I told Bella not to worry about it and went back to my work. A few minutes later, Olivia knocked on my door and walked in without waiting for an answer. She stood in front of my desk and looked down at me with a cold and superior stare. She told me she was surprised I had not handed in my resignation yet. She suggested that I should start looking for a new job before things got uncomfortable for me. She acted like she was doing me a huge favor by giving me a head start on my exit. I stared at her as if I were looking at a complete stranger for the first time. I told her she was a total piece of trash, and it was the first time I had ever used that kind of language with her. She did not even try to defend herself. Now that we were over, Olivia had no problem showing off a relationship with Jerry to the entire office. She posted constant updates on Facebook, and half the company was leaving supportive comments. I ignored every single one of them. Jerry decided to confront me on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was in the break room by myself, making a fresh pot of coffee. I heard him walk in and stand right behind me while I was busy. I stepped to the side to give him some space, but he stayed planted right in front of me. He looked me in the eye and told me he knew all about my secret history with Olivia. He even called her by a nickname I had not heard in years. He told me that his father was very impressed with Olivia's work and intended to promote her. He said they were officially a couple and that she had chosen him over me. He seemed very proud of himself for stealing her away. He said my presence in the office was becoming a bit of an embarrassment for everyone involved. He suggested that if I had any dignity, I would resign immediately. I just stood there holding my coffee and watched him with a very calm smile. I told him that any changes to my employment status would have to go through the proper HR channels. I reminded him that firing a senior manager required a documented cause and a formal review process. He looked a bit flustered when I mentioned the actual company policy. I pointed out that the only person with the authority to terminate my contract was the chairman himself. I reminded him that he was technically just an intern in Olivia's department. I suggested he stay in his lane before he caused a scene. The chairman hosted a lavish farewell dinner for Albert before his big move. Pablo Harrison sat at the head of the table with Jerry and Olivia right next to him. Everyone in the room was whispering about the obvious favoritism being shown to the intern. Pablo stood up and announced to the room that he only had one son to carry on his legacy. He said it was finally time to officially introduce his heir to the senior management team. He turned to me with a proud smile and told me to come over and stand by my father. I set my napkin down on the table and stood up with a very confident smile. The room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop until Olivia accidentally knocked over her wine glass. Her face went pale as she stared at me. I walked over to the head of the table while the entire executive board watched in stunned silence. I looked at Jerry and politely asked him to move out of my seat. I knew this revelation was going to be the only thing anyone talked about for the next year. Once the room was empty, my father dropped the public persona and looked at me very seriously. He asked me what was going on between me and Olivia. I looked him in the eye and gave him a cold and distant smile. I told him that Jerry had successfully seduced her away from me. I pointed out that Jerry was simply following in his mother's footsteps by breaking up a happy home. I made sure to emphasize the word dad, just to see him flinch a little. I hadn't called him dad since the day he walked out on us when I was 7 years old. My mother was the one who had built this company with him from the ground up. She had been there when he had absolutely nothing. As soon as the money started rolling in, Jerry's mother suddenly reappeared in his life. My mother was too proud to fight for a man who did not want her, so she filed for divorce immediately. She did not want to share her life with a liar. Olivia only knew that my parents were divorced and that I used my mother's maiden name. My mother had walked away with her dignity and a fair settlement, but she never asked for another dime from him. She wanted a clean break from the Harrison name. I was not as selfless as my mother was about the family fortune. I saw no reason to let a couple of grifters inherit the empire she had helped build. That was why I joined the company under a different name and worked my way up from the very bottom. Word traveled fast, and soon everyone knew that Jerry was nothing more than the son of a former mistress. I ran into him in the finance department while I was getting some budgets approved. He looked like he was having a very bad day. The head of finance was chewing him out for trying to charge a designer handbag to the company account. She told him flat out that she would never approve personal expenses like that. Jerry turned bright red and snatched the papers off her desk before storming out of the room. Once my true identity was out in the open, my father started fast-tracking me through every department in the firm. Olivia's promotion was canceled immediately, and she was left in a dead-end position. I was moved up to a senior executive role, which left my old manager spot open. Jerry was the first one to come crawling back to confront me. We were back in the break room, where he had tried to intimidate me just a week before. The arrogance in his eyes had been replaced by a desperate kind of pure rage. I told him that once I took over, I would make sure he and his mother kept their monthly allowance. I told him to consider it a consulting fee for keeping my father entertained for all those years. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack right there in front of me. He tried to hit me where it hurt by bringing up Olivia and claiming he had won her. I did not even look up as I told him that trash belongs in the garbage. I told him he was more than welcome to keep her because she was exactly what he deserved. I was not surprised when Olivia finally handed in her resignation notice. I let HR handle it and did not lift a finger to stop her or speed it up. On her final day at the office, she sent me an iMessage asking if we could talk one last time. She brought me a coffee, and we stood together in front of the massive windows in my new office. The Chicago skyline was breathtaking at night, with millions of lights flickering below us. It felt like we were standing on top of the world. I remembered her asking me how long it would take for us to finally make it big. It was her ambition that had driven me to swallow my pride and ask my father for help. That was the first time I had ever asked him for a professional favor. She thought the only way to the top was through networking and playing dirty office politics. She looked at me with a sad kind of nostalgia and asked where it all went wrong. I did not have the heart to tell her that she was the one who left. She asked if we were even since she had cheated and I had lied about who my father was. I just looked at her and shook my head because some things can never be balanced out. I asked her if she truly believed that sexual betrayal and personal privacy were the same thing. I told her that she would always be in my debt and that I had no intention of ever forgiving her. I told her that from now on we were going to be total strangers. There was nothing left to say between us. I ran into Olivia a few times over the next few years at various marketing conferences. By then, I had already taken over the Harrison Group, and I was the most powerful man in any room I entered. She was usually standing in the back of the crowd, trying to build a new career from scratch at a smaller firm. I never found out exactly when she and Jerry ended things, but I was not surprised when I heard they were over. I sat on my porch and watched the sunset over my estate while enjoying a quiet moment. The past was finally behind me, and I had already moved on to a much better life without her. You thought you ditched a manager. You actually lost your only genuine heart at the top. Generational debts in with me. Reclaiming my authority isn't just about winning. It's about reclaiming the dignity of the woman who walked away without looking back.